Good evening, everyone. Allow me to do the usual protocols. I understand one begins with excellencies, honorable colleague ministers, distinguished guests and speakers, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank the Foundation for inviting me to speak at and attend the Raisina Dialogues for the very first time. I believe this is a critical forum for the exchange of ideas and for reflection on innovative solutions to the complex challenges that all our countries are required to respond to. In the first decade of this century, it has become increasingly obvious that citizens all over the world are feeling a growing impatience and irritation at our inability to respond speedily and impactfully on the many socio-economic and other problems that confront our communities. For many years, we had the availability of charismatic leaders who could sway the public mood, and this was sufficient to quell dissent and, in many instances, oppressive authoritarian practices held resistance back. But it is becoming less and less easy to persuade citizens that all will get better and they should be patient. It is therefore probable that the rest of this 21st century could be the beginning of an age of agitation, possibly of new ideas, of new leaders, and of new, we hope, progressive philosophies and ideologies. Dr. Sarin and team have introduced the notion of the Alpha century to the theme of this dialogue. Of course, for us as women, the concept Alpha does not have positive connotations for gender activists. It implies male, aggressive, and excluding. But let us, for this moment, accept that the intended meaning is the highest peak of excellence and the aspiration that this will be achieved in this century by all the people of the globe. This is an ambition none of us would reject. Our country, South Africa, is one of the key emerging economies of the South. It is a country determined to succeed in creating a durable democracy based on our constitution and the African aspirations of Agenda 2063, which defines and describes the Africa we want. This year, South Africa will celebrate 26 years of freedom and will assume the chairship of the African Union. Our country is a strong believer in multilateralism and the development of international collaboration to advance the good of humanity. The world is experiencing regional conflicts that may appear minimal in global terms, and yet they are actually global proxy wars affecting millions of people, affecting poor communities, destroying infrastructure, and the prospect of future peace. We believe as South Africa that the international community needs to devote much more attention to developing a common global agenda for peace. There are many leaders today who believe that peace will be achieved through increased aggression, through larger defense architecture, or through economic dominance. All of these aspects exist in some of our societies, but none of them have been a contribution to peace. Instead, they have created new enemies through increased human tragedy in conflict and through failure to develop support for and promotion of human dignity and respect for diversity. It is our view that such values and principles need to be advanced through a strong United Nations. These ideals are, in our view, fundamental principles, and they're contained in the Constitution of post-apartheid South Africa. Our ambition is to create a nation united in diversity, a nation that is non-racial, and a nation that is non-sexist. These are difficult ambitions for a nation such as ours, a nation emerging from one of the most debilitating experiences of prejudice and oppressive social engineering. And yet, these principles and values are central to building a new South Africa, and so we cannot, by any means, desert them. We extracted these progressive values from our experience of international solidarity in the struggle for freedom. It was multilateralism and a common United Nations position that resulted in the freedom of our first president of a democratic South Africa, Nelson Mandela, and the freedom of all the people of South Africa. While indeed it is our belief, as other colleagues have said, that the United Nations, and particularly its Security Council, must be modernized and fundamentally reformed, we do not agree with the current efforts to diminish the global role of the United Nations and its various structures. We hold similar views with respect to the attempts to weaken the World Trade Organization. We do not claim it is a perfect organization, but we believe it provides us as a global trading community with a rules-based system and a mechanism through which we can address our concerns. We hold the view that it is only through multilateralism that we will solve intractable global problems. Unilateral military action will merely increase tensions and casualties. Of course, we are also keen to have increased focus on developing countries and greater attention to eradicating poverty and inequality. This will, we believe, be an effective response to removing the rationale for joining radical groups and criminal gangs. I've been intrigued that much of the discussion about the warring conflicts that we see appears to suggest that more aggression, more military might will reduce the conflicts we see, whereas actually what we should strive for is engaging communities, changing attitudes and perspectives, addressing poverty, ensuring that we provide education that change mindsets, that creates new value systems, and that allows every person to have the view that they are part of the world community. In the past 2 years, we've seen an erosion of global collaboration, and we have seen halted progress in combating poverty and in actively pursuing implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. If we were to ask each of us to stand up and indicate in their country which aspect of the SDGs, the 17, that were adopted in 2015, enjoys great impetus and catalytic support, I'm sure we would struggle to identify the actual action that we're taking to address these particular goals. We have planned that we in Africa will vigorously pursue an agenda for peace on our continent because we believe that peace will be the basis for development on the African continent. And thus we are extremely concerned when we see parts of our continent become the space for proxy wars between groups that don't come from the African continent and yet are destructive to several of countries in our region. We believe there must be peace. We believe there's a strong link between peace, development, and prosperity, and that we can only implement our grand ambition of Agenda 2063 and our grand ambition of building an African free trade area if we achieve the objective of silencing the guns by the end of 2020, which is part of the strategy that the African Union has underway. Our country, South Africa, believes the world desperately needs logical and innovative thinking, and that a forum such as this one, this dialogue, could be the space in which a new progressive mindset is inculcated and supported. We should challenge outdated notions here and breathe new life into this new decade. The dialogues must ensure that they never become a space for reviving outdated notions on war and conflict. They must be a space in which we forge new hope, a new hope that it is possible for the world to be a better place for all humanity. If we can achieve that in these dialogues, we would have made great advances. So we should be wary of having speakers who advance the cause of conflict and the cause of war. We want speakers who will create a world that is better, who will ensure that humanity has opportunity, who will ensure that women enjoy equality, that we respect diversity of all human beings, and that indeed that promise, both in the UN Charter and in the Constitution of South Africa, that the world belongs to all who live in it, that that ideal would be realized. Thank you very much for your attention.